3 bullets in the chamber, 3 seconds to decide. 3 reasons why Isabella Romano should have died the moment she saw his face. But Luca Moretti, the most feared man in the New York underworld, couldn't pull the trigger, because when she looked at him with those terrified green eyes still wet with tears, still holding on to some impossible hope that the world was good, something inside him that had been dead for 15 years suddenly, painfully, came back to life. If you want to discover how a case of mistaken identity transformed a ruthless mafia boss and an innocent college student into something neither of them saw coming, subscribe to the channel now. Leave a like if you believe that even the darkest hearts can find redemption, and tell me in the comments where are you listening to this story from. Your presence here makes all the difference. The warehouse on the Brooklyn waterfront smelled of salt water, rust, and the particular kind of fear that comes when you realize nobody knows where you are and nobody is coming to save you. Isabella had been conscious for maybe 10 minutes, her head still throbbing from whatever they'd used to knock her out, her wrists bound with zip ties that cut into her skin every time she moved. The concrete floor was cold beneath her, and somewhere in the darkness water dripped with a steady, maddening rhythm that seemed to count down the seconds she had left. She didn't understand. 6 hours ago, she'd been leaving the Columbia University library, her backpack heavy with medical textbooks, her mind focused on the anatomy exam she had in 2 days. She'd been thinking about coffee, about whether she had time to grab something to eat before her night shift at the campus bookstore, about how she needed to call her mom back because she'd missed her call that morning. Normal things. Safe things. The things a 22-year-old pre-med student thinks about on a Tuesday evening in October. Then the van had pulled up beside her. Then the hands grabbing her. Then nothing but darkness, until she woke up here, in this nightmare that couldn't possibly be real. The metal door at the far end of the warehouse screeched open, and Isabella's heart stopped. 3 men walked in, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous space, and even in the dim light she could see they weren't the kind of men you asked for help. They moved like predators, comfortable in the darkness, and when the tallest one stepped into the pool of light from the single bare bulb hanging overhead, Isabella forgot how to breathe. Luca Moretti was 36 years old and looked like he'd been carved from marble by someone who understood that beauty and danger weren't opposites, but twins. He stood 6'3", his frame built with the kind of strength that came from violence, not Jim's. His black hair was cut short, his jaw sharp enough to cut glass, and his eyes were the color of smoke, gray and impenetrable and completely utterly cold. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than Isabella's entire year of tuition, and when he looked at her, really looked at her for the first time, his expression didn't change at all. No pity, no mercy, nothing. Is this her? His voice was low, controlled, the kind of voice that never had to raise itself to be obeyed. One of the other men, shorter with a scar running down his left cheek, nodded. Grabbed her outside Columbia, boss. Just like you said, right time, right place. Luca walked closer, circling Isabella like she was something he was considering purchasing. She tried not to shake, tried to keep breathing normally, but her body betrayed her. Tears she hadn't even realized were falling streaked down her face, and when she tried to speak, her voice came out broken, barely a whisper. Please, I don't know what you want, but there's been a mistake. I'm nobody. I'm just a student. I don't have any money. I don't know anything important. I can't. Isabella Romano. Luca's voice cut through her panic like a knife. 22 years old. Pre-med at Columbia. Lives alone in a studio apartment on West 104th Street. Father died when you were 12. Mother remarried. Lives in Connecticut now. No siblings. No boyfriend. No life insurance policy worth mentioning. Each fact he recited felt like a violation, like he'd reached inside her chest and pulled out pieces of her life she hadn't given him permission to touch. How do you know all that? What do you want from me? For the first time, something flickered across Luca's face. Not emotion, exactly, but something close to interest. He crouched down in front of her, bringing himself to her eye level, and Isabella could smell his cologne, expensive and dark, mixing with the salt air and her own fear. "Your uncle," he said simply. "Vincent Romano. He took something from me. $3 million and a very important flash drive containing information that could destroy several very powerful people. We had an agreement. He broke it. So, now I take something from him. You." Isabella's mind was spinning. "Vincent? My Uncle Vincent? I haven't seen him in years. He and my mom don't even talk anymore. I don't know anything about any money or any flash drive. You have the wrong person. Please, you have to believe me. I don't have to do anything." Luca interrupted, but his voice had lost some of its edge. He was studying her face with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Vincent Romano has one niece. You. He loves you. That's his weakness. That's my leverage. He doesn't love me." The words burst out of Isabella before she could stop them, desperate and raw. "He sent me a birthday card with $50 in it when I turned 18, and I haven't heard from him since. I don't even have his phone number. My mom says he's involved in things we shouldn't know about, so we stay away. Whatever you think I am to him, you're wrong. I'm nobody to him. I'm nobody to anyone. I'm worthless as leverage." The warehouse went silent except for the dripping water and Isabella's ragged breathing. Luca's eyes narrowed, and for a long moment, he didn't move. Then he stood abruptly, turning to the scarred man. "Marco, show me the surveillance photos again." Marco pulled out his phone, tapping quickly, then handed it to Luca. Isabella watched as Luca's jaw tightened, his fingers gripping the phone so hard she thought it might shatter. When he looked up, his expression was carefully blank, but something dangerous lurked beneath the surface. "This is Sofia Romano," he said quietly, and the other men in the room went very still. "Vincent's actual niece, the one he raised after his sister died, the one he walks to class every Tuesday because he's paranoid about her safety, the one who looks nothing like this girl, tied up on my warehouse floor." The silence that followed was the kind that comes right before someone dies. Isabella felt it pressing down on her chest, stealing the air from her lungs. Marco's face had gone pale. "Boss, I swear, we followed your intel. Columbia University, Tuesday evening, brown hair, early 20s. You grabbed the wrong girl." Luca's voice was soft now, which somehow made it more terrifying. "You kidnapped a completely innocent civilian who has nothing to do with Vincent Romano or my missing $3 million. He turned back to Isabella, and for the first time since he'd walked into the warehouse, she saw something in his eyes that wasn't ice. It was frustration, yes, and anger at his men's incompetence. But there was something else too, something that looked almost like concern, though that couldn't be right. Men like him didn't feel concern. "Please," Isabella whispered, and she hated how small her voice sounded, how broken. "Please just let me go. I won't tell anyone. I didn't see your faces clearly. I don't even know where I am. I'll forget this ever happened. I promise." Luca stared at her for a long moment, and Isabella could see him calculating, weighing options she couldn't begin to guess at. Then, he did something that surprised everyone in the room, including himself. He pulled a knife from inside his jacket. Isabella's breath caught, her body going rigid with terror, but instead of moving toward her, Luca crouched down again and cut through the zip ties around her wrists. The plastic fell away, and Isabella immediately brought her hands to her chest, rubbing the raw, red marks the restraints had left behind. "You saw my face," Luca said quietly. "You heard my name. You know what I do. Or at least you can guess. Do you really think I can just let you walk out of here and trust that you'll keep your mouth shut? Do you understand how this works? I understand that I'm probably going to die. Isabella's voice was steadier now, though tears still tracked down her face. I understand that you're going to kill me because your men made a mistake, and you can't risk me going to the police. I understand that my mom is going to wait for me to call her back, and I never will, and she'll never know what happened to me. I understand all of that, but I'm asking anyway. Please, I don't want to die. I haven't even lived yet. Something in the way she said it, the raw honesty, the absence of manipulation or bargaining, made Luca's chest tighten in a way he hadn't felt since he was young, since before his father's blood had soaked into the carpet of their family home, and he'd learned that mercy was just another word for weakness. He should kill her. Every rule he'd lived by for the past 15 years said so. She was a witness. She was a liability. She was a loose end that could unravel everything if left untied. But when he looked at her, really looked at her, all he could see was innocence. Not stupidity or naivety, but genuine innocence. The kind that believed the world could be good, that people could be trusted, that studying hard and working overtime and calling your mother back actually mattered. The kind of innocence he'd forgotten existed. She was wearing jeans and a Columbia sweatshirt, both now dirty from the warehouse floor. No makeup, no jewelry except for a small silver cross on a chain around her neck. Her brown hair was tangled, her face streaked with tears and dust, and she was looking at him like he was a monster. Which he was. Which made what he did next completely insane. "Marco," he said without taking his eyes off Isabella, "take the others and go. I'll handle this." Marco hesitated. "Boss, you want us to." I said go. The command in Luca's voice left no room for argument. The three men filed out quickly, the metal door slamming shut behind them, leaving Luca and Isabella alone in the vast, echoing space. Isabella's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Being alone with him felt more dangerous than being surrounded by all of them. She tried to stand, to put some distance between them, but her legs were shaking too badly and she nearly fell. Luca caught her arm, steadying her, and the touch sent a jolt through both of them that neither understood. "Easy," he said, and his voice was different now. Quieter, less like a death sentence. "When did you last eat?" The question was so unexpected that Isabella just stared at him. What? "Food. When did you last eat? I don't—" "Lunch, I guess. Around noon. Why does that matter?" Luca let go of her arm and walked to a metal cabinet against the far wall. He pulled out a bottle of water and what looked like a protein bar, then brought them back to her. "Drink. Eat. You're in shock and dehydration isn't going to help." Isabella took them with trembling hands, not because she was hungry, but because she had no idea what else to do. She opened the water and drank, the cool liquid soothing her raw throat. Luca watched her, his expression unreadable. "I'm not going to kill you," he said finally. Isabella choked on the water. "What? You heard me. I'm not going to kill you. But I can't let you go either. Not yet. I don't understand. That makes two of us." Luca ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that seemed uncharacteristically uncertain. "You're a problem I didn't plan for. If I let you go to the police. If you go to the police, they come after me. That creates complications I don't need right now, especially with Vincent still in the wind with my money. So what, you're just going to keep me here? Lock me in this warehouse forever?" "No." Luca pulled out his phone, typing quickly. "I'm going to keep you somewhere else. Somewhere comfortable. Somewhere you'll have everything you need until I figure out what to do with you. That's still kidnapping. I'm aware." He looked up from his phone, and for the first time, Isabella saw something almost like regret in those gray eyes. But it's better than the alternative. For both of us. A black SUV pulled up outside 20 minutes later. Luca guided Isabella into the back seat, his hand on her lower back, in a gesture that felt weirdly protective for a man who was actively holding her against her will. She didn't fight. What would be the point? She had no idea where she was, and even if she ran, he'd catch her in seconds. Besides, there was something in the way he'd looked at her when he said he wasn't going to kill her that made her believe him, which was insane, which made her just as crazy as he was. They drove through Brooklyn, then over the bridge into Manhattan. Isabella watched the familiar skyline pass by through tinted windows, so close to her normal life but impossibly far away. She thought about her exam in 2 days, about the shift she was going to miss at the bookstore, about her mom waiting for a call that wouldn't come. "Can I at least tell my mother I'm okay?" she asked quietly. Luca didn't look at her. "No. She'll think I'm dead. She'll file a missing persons report. She'll think you decided to take a few days for yourself. I'll have someone send her a text from your phone. Something about needing space to study for midterms. You can't just, I can do whatever I want, Isabella." His voice was hard again, the brief softness from the warehouse gone. "The sooner you understand that, the easier this will be for both of us." The SUV pulled up in front of a building in Tribeca that looked like it cost more than most people made in a lifetime. All glass and steel, and the kind of understatement that only extreme wealth could afford. The doorman nodded at Luca as if seeing him arrive with a terrified, disheveled young woman was completely normal. Maybe it was. Isabella didn't want to think about what that meant. They took a private elevator to the penthouse. Luca used a keycard, and the doors opened directly into his apartment. Because of course they did. Of course a man who kidnapped people for a living had the kind of home where the elevator opened into a sprawling space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson River and furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Isabella stood frozen in the entryway, taking it all in. Modern art on the walls, hardwood floors that gleamed, a kitchen with marble countertops and appliances she couldn't even name. It was beautiful and cold and somehow exactly what she'd expected. "The guest room is down that hall," Luca said, pointing. "Second door on the left. There's a bathroom attached. You'll find clothes in the closet that should fit you. Shower, sleep, whatever you need. Clothes that will fit me?" Isabella turned to stare at him. "How could you possibly have clothes that fit me? Did you plan this? Have you done this before?" Something dark flickered across Luca's face. "My sister stayed here sometimes. Before she died. You're about her size." The way he said it, flat and final, made Isabella's questions die in her throat. She wanted to say she was sorry for his loss, but the words felt absurd under the circumstances. Instead, she just nodded and walked toward the hallway he'd indicated, feeling his eyes on her back the entire way. The guest room was larger than her entire studio apartment. A king-sized bed dominated the space, covered in white linens that looked soft as clouds. The attached bathroom had a shower with multiple heads, heated floors, and more towels than one person could possibly need. Isabella caught sight of herself in the mirror and barely recognized the girl staring back. Her hair was wild, her face streaked with dirt and dried tears, her eyes too wide and too frightened. She looked like a victim. She hated it. The shower was so hot it almost burned, but Isabella stood under the spray until her skin turned pink, trying to wash away the feel of the warehouse floor, the zip ties, the terror. She found shampoo that smelled like jasmine and used probably too much of it. When she finally stepped out, wrapping herself in a towel that was somehow both impossibly soft and impossibly warm, she felt almost human again. The closet held exactly what Luca had promised. Women's clothes, designer labels, all in her size. Jeans and sweaters and dresses, and even pajamas. Isabella chose the simplest things she could find, a pair of black leggings and an oversized gray sweater, and tried not to think about the sister who'd died, the woman who'd worn these clothes before her. When she emerged from the room, she found Luca in the kitchen, pulling containers out of the refrigerator. He'd taken off his suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms marked with scars and what looked like the edge of a tattoo. He glanced up when she entered, and something in his expression shifted, softened almost imperceptibly. "You look better," he said, and it wasn't a compliment, just an observation. "I heated up some pasta. It's from a restaurant down the street. I don't cook." Isabella wanted to say she wasn't hungry, but her stomach betrayed her with a loud growl. She hadn't eaten since noon, and fear had burned through whatever energy she'd had left. Luca pulled out a bar stool at the kitchen island, and after a moment's hesitation, Isabella sat. He placed a plate in front of her, fettuccine in what smelled like a cream sauce with herbs she couldn't identify. It looked amazing. It tasted even better. They ate in silence, the only sound the scrape of forks against plates and the distant hum of the city below. Isabella kept stealing glances at Luca, trying to reconcile the man who'd terrified her in the warehouse with the one who was making sure she ate. "Why are you doing this?" she asked finally. "You said yourself I'm a problem. Wouldn't it be easier to just—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Luca set down his fork, his gray eyes meeting hers directly. "Yes, it would be easier. It would be smarter. It would be what anyone in my position should do. But you're not supposed to be here. You're not part of this world. You're not someone who made choices that led them to my warehouse. You're just a girl who was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I'm the monster who destroyed your life because my men were incompetent." The self-awareness in his voice surprised her. "So you feel guilty?" A bitter smile touched Luca's lips. "I'm not capable of guilt, Isabella. I left that behind a long time ago. But I'm capable of recognizing a mistake when I see one. You're a mistake I'm choosing not to compound. By keeping me prisoner in your penthouse? By keeping you alive." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Isabella pushed her pasta around her plate, no longer hungry. "How long?" "What? How long am I going to be here? Days? Weeks? Forever?" Luca stood, carrying his plate to the sink. "Until I find Vincent and recover what he took from me. Once that's handled, once the situation is resolved, I'll figure out what to do about you. And if you don't find him, I'll find him." The certainty in his voice was absolute. Men like Vincent always surface eventually. They get arrogant, or desperate, or sloppy. And when he does, I'll be waiting. Isabella watched him rinse the dishes, this surreal domestic moment in the middle of a nightmare. What if I try to escape? Luca turned to face her, leaning against the counter. "You won't. You sound very sure of that. I am. Because you're smart enough to realize you have nowhere to go. If you leave here, if you go to the police, you put yourself in more danger than you're in right now. I'm not the only person looking for Vincent. There are others, and they're much less inclined to spare innocent bystanders than I am. You're safer here, even if you don't believe it. That's insane. That's reality." He crossed his arms over his chest, and the gesture made him look somehow both intimidating and tired. "I know this isn't what you wanted. I know you're scared. But I'm offering you something most people in your situation don't get. A chance to survive this. Take it." Isabella didn't sleep that night. She lay in the enormous bed in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the city that never slept filtering through the windows. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the warehouse, felt the zip ties cutting into her wrists, heard Luca's voice saying her uncle's name like a curse. Around 3 in the morning, she gave up on sleep entirely and wandered out into the living room. The penthouse was dark, except for the glow of the city lights through the floor-to-ceiling windows. She stood there for a long time, looking out at Manhattan spread below her like a carpet of stars, and tried to make sense of the past 12 hours. "Can't sleep?" The voice behind her made Isabella jump, her heart leaping into her throat. Luca stood in the hallway wearing gray sweatpants and nothing else, his chest bare, revealing the full extent of the tattoos she'd only glimpsed earlier. A massive piece covered his left side, all dark lines and shadowed imagery she couldn't quite make out in the dim light. Scars crisscrossed his ribs, his abdomen, stories written in violence on his skin. "Sorry," he said, though he didn't sound particularly apologetic. "Didn't mean to scare you." "Everything about you scares me," Isabella replied honestly. A ghost of a smile touched Luca's lips. "Fair." He moved to the kitchen, pulling 2 glasses from a cabinet. "Water? Or something stronger?" "Water is fine." She watched as he filled both glasses, noting the way he moved, economical and controlled, like violence was always just barely held in check. He handed her a glass, then moved to stand beside her at the window. For a few moments they just looked out at the city together, 2 people who shouldn't exist in the same space, but somehow did. "I was supposed to defend my thesis next month," Isabella said quietly. "My research is on pediatric cardiology. I've been working on it for 2 years. There's a little girl at Mount Sinai, 7 years old, who has a congenital heart defect that most doctors said was inoperable. But I found a study out of Germany, and I've been working with her surgical team to adapt the technique. She's supposed to have the surgery in 6 weeks. She didn't know why she was telling him this. Maybe because the silence felt too heavy. Maybe because she needed to remind herself who she was, what she was fighting to get back to." Luca listened without interrupting. When she finished, he took a long drink of his water before speaking. "You'll be back for it. You can't promise that. I just did." He turned to look at her, and in the darkness, his eyes seemed less cold, more human. "I told you I'd figure this out. I meant it. Why do you even care?" Isabella's voice rose slightly, frustration breaking through her fear. "You don't know me. I'm nothing to you except a problem that needs solving. So why not just solve it the easiest way and be done with it?" Luca was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low, almost too quiet to hear. "Because when I was 7 years old, I watched my father murder my mother in our kitchen. He'd been drinking, they'd been fighting, and he put his hands around her throat and he squeezed until she stopped moving. And I stood there, and I didn't do anything, because I was too small, too weak, too scared. When he finally let go and saw what he'd done, he turned the gun on himself, left me there with both bodies and no idea how to be anything except what he'd taught me to be." Isabella's breath caught. She hadn't expected honesty, certainly not that kind of devastating honesty. "My father's associates raised me after that. Men like him, men who understood that violence was currency and mercy was weakness. They taught me everything I know, how to fight, how to intimidate, how to turn fear into power. By the time I was 20, I'd killed my first man. By 25, I was running my own crew. By 30, I controlled half the illegal operations in New York. And somewhere, in all of that, I forgot what it felt like to be that 7-year-old boy watching something innocent die." He paused, his jaw tight. "Then I walk into that warehouse and I see you, terrified and crying and so goddamn innocent it hurts to look at you. And for the first time in 15 years, I remember. I remember that not everyone in this world is already broken, that some people still believe in things like justice and goodness and the future. And I realize that if I kill you, I'm just continuing the cycle. I'm just my father all over again, destroying something pure, Because it's easier than protecting it. Tears were streaming down Isabella's face now, though she couldn't have said exactly why. I'm not pure. I'm not some perfect victim you need to save to redeem yourself. I know, Luca said simply. You're a real person with flaws and fears and a life you worked hard to build. Which makes this even worse. Because you don't deserve any of this, and I can't undo it. All I can do is try to minimize the damage. They stood there in the darkness, the city glowing below them, two broken people trying to find solid ground. Isabella should have been terrified. She should have been plotting escape, fighting back, doing anything except standing here having a real conversation with her kidnapper. But there was something in Luca's honesty, in the pain she could hear beneath his controlled exterior, that made her see him as human instead of monster. Which was probably exactly what he wanted. Which made her stupid for falling for it. I should go back to bed, she said, setting down her glass. Yeah. But neither of them moved. The moment stretched, became something else, something neither could name. Finally, Luca stepped back, breaking whatever spell had formed. Good night, Isabella. Good night. She walked back to the guest room, closing the door behind her, and only then did she let herself shake. Not from fear this time, from something much more complicated. 3 days passed in a strange, suspended reality. Isabella spent most of her time in the guest room, reading medical journals on her phone until the battery died, and Luca provided a charger without her asking. She emerged for meals that he either ordered in or heated up from the seemingly endless supply of restaurant containers in his refrigerator. They ate together at the kitchen island, conversation stilted at first, then gradually, inexplicably becoming easier. On the second day, she found textbooks on the coffee table. Advanced pharmacology. Pathological anatomy. The exact ones she'd been carrying when she was taken. How did you... She started. I sent someone to your apartment, Luca said, not looking up from his laptop. Got your books, some clothes, toiletries. Anything you need. You broke into my apartment? I had someone pick the lock. Technically different. He glanced at her then, and something almost like amusement flickered in his eyes. Would you prefer to study in what you were wearing when we grabbed you? Isabella wanted to be angry, but the truth was, she was grateful. The familiar weight of her textbooks in her hands made her feel less like a prisoner and more like herself. She curled up on the couch and lost herself in cardiovascular pathology, and for hours at a time, she could almost forget where she was. Almost. On the third day, Luca had a meeting. 3 men in expensive suits arrived, all of them giving Isabella long, calculating looks that made her skin crawl. Luca noticed, his expression darkening. Gentlemen. The study. Now. He looked at Isabella. Stay here. Don't come out until they're gone. She nodded, watching as they disappeared into a room down the hall. For the next hour, she could hear muffled voices, occasionally rising in what sounded like argument. She tried to focus on her reading, but her mind kept wandering to what they might be discussing, whether she was part of the conversation, whether her time was running out. When the men finally left, Luca emerged looking tired in a way she hadn't seen before. He poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey and drank it standing at the window. Everything okay? Isabella asked, then immediately felt stupid. Nothing about this was okay. Define okay. Luca turned to face her, glass in hand. Vincent surfaced, made contact with one of my people, offering to negotiate. That's good, right? That means this can end? It means he wants something. Men like Vincent don't negotiate from kindness. They negotiate because they're desperate, or they think they have leverage. What kind of leverage? Luca's eyes met hers, and she saw the answer before he spoke. He knows I have you. Isabella's blood went cold. How could he possibly know that? Because someone told him. Someone in my organization who shouldn't have known, but did. Which means I have a leak, and that's almost as problematic as Vincent himself. He finished his drink, set the glass down with more force than necessary. He wants to trade. Money and the flash drive for you. So give me to him. The words came out before Isabella could stop them. Get your money back. End this. Let me go home. You don't know what you're asking. I'm asking for my life back. No. Luca's voice was hard, final. You're asking to be handed over to a man who's worse than I am. Vincent doesn't leave witnesses, Isabella. He doesn't have the luxury of guilt or second thoughts. If I give you to him, you'll be dead within hours. Is that what you want? I want to not be here. I want to not be part of whatever this is. She was standing now, her voice rising. You say you're protecting me, but you're the reason I need protection in the first place. You took me. You ruined my life, and now you're telling me I can't even use that to end this? Luca crossed the distance between them in 3 strides, and suddenly he was right there, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him, could see the muscle jumping in his jaw. You think I don't know that? You think I don't wake up every morning wishing my men had grabbed the right girl so I wouldn't have to look at you and remember what it's like to care about something? You want to hate me? Fine. Hate me. But I'm not giving you to Vincent. Why not? Isabella's voice broke on the words. Why do you even care what happens to me? Because. He stopped, seeming to catch himself. When he continued, his voice was quieter. Strained. Because I've destroyed enough already. I'm not adding you to that list. They stood there, barely a foot apart, breathing hard, caught in something neither could name. Isabella could see the war happening behind Luca's eyes, control fighting against something raw and genuine. She should step back. She should put distance between them. Instead, she heard herself ask, "What happened to your sister?" Luca's expression shuddered immediately. That's not something we're going to talk about. You know everything about me. My whole life. Every detail. But I know nothing about you, except that you're a criminal who can't seem to decide whether to kill me or protect me. Don't I deserve something? Some understanding of who's holding me here? For a long moment, Luca just stared at her. Then, slowly, he stepped back, creating space, rebuilding walls. Her name was Sophia. She was 5 years younger than me. After our parents died, she was all I had. I kept her away from the business, made sure she went to good schools, had a normal life. She wanted to be a teacher. Worked with kids in the Bronx. His voice was flat, reciting facts without emotion. 3 years ago, a rival crew decided the best way to get to me was through her. They took her, held her for 2 weeks. By the time I found her, he didn't finish. He didn't need to. Isabella felt her heart clench. I'm sorry. Don't be. I killed every single person involved. Slowly. Made sure they understood exactly what they'd done before they died. And then I burned everything they'd ever built to the ground. You want to know why I can't give you to Vincent? Because I know what happens to innocent women when men like me use them as leverage. I watched Sophia stop being herself, stop believing the world could be good. And even after I got her back, even after I made sure she was safe, she was never the same. She lasted 6 months before she couldn't take it anymore. The pieces clicked into place in Isabella's mind. She killed herself. Luca's silence was answer enough. So no, he continued, his voice rough. I'm not giving you to Vincent. I'm not letting you become another name I carry. I'll find another way. That night changed something between them. Isabella stopped seeing Luca as just her captor, and Luca stopped pretending Isabella was just a problem to be solved. They didn't talk about it. They didn't acknowledge it. But it was there in the way he started leaving coffee for her in the morning, made exactly how she liked it even though she'd never told him. It was there in the way she started cooking dinner, simple things from ingredients she found in his rarely used kitchen, and he ate everything she made without complaint. It was there in the late-night conversations that happened more and more frequently, both of them unable to sleep, drawn to each other like magnets in the darkness. A week passed. Then, too, Isabella should have been climbing the walls, desperate to escape, but instead, she found herself settling into a routine. Mornings studying, afternoons reading or watching the city below, evenings with Luca when he came back from whatever business he conducted during the day. He never told her details, and she never asked, maintaining the fiction that she didn't know exactly what he was. On the 14th night, Isabella was attempting to make pasta from scratch, having found a recipe online, and decided to try it. Flour covered the counter, the floor, and somehow her face. The dough wasn't cooperating, refusing to come together the way the video had promised. "You're using too much flour," Luca said from the doorway, and Isabella jumped, not having heard him come in. He'd shed his jacket and tie, his sleeves rolled up, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. The recipe said, "The recipe is wrong." He moved to the sink, washing his hands. "Move over. I'll show you. You said you don't cook. I said I don't cook often. Didn't say I couldn't." Luca stepped up beside her, close enough that she could feel his presence like heat. "Here. It's about feel more than measurement. You want it to just barely come together." His hands covered hers, guiding them through the dough, showing her the right pressure, the right movement. Isabella's breath caught at the contact, at the strange intimacy of his hands on hers, flour dust between them, the domesticity of the moment almost painful in its normalcy. "Like this," he murmured, and his voice was close to her ear, sending shivers down her spine that had nothing to do with fear. For 10 minutes they worked together in silence, their movements synchronizing, and Isabella couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this aware of another human being. Every breath he took, every shift of his weight, every accidental brush of his arm against hers, registered like an electric shock. When the dough finally came together, smooth and elastic, Luca stepped back, and the loss of his presence felt like cold water. "Now let it rest," he said, his voice rougher than it had been. 30 minutes. Isabella nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She washed her hands, acutely aware of Luca watching her, of the changed quality of the air between them. When she turned around, he was still there, leaning against the counter, his gray eyes dark and unreadable. "Isabella," he started, then stopped, seeming to catch himself. "Thank you," she said quickly, filling the silence. "For showing me. For—" She gestured vaguely at the kitchen, the apartment, the strange life they'd built in this suspended reality. "For all of it, I guess. You shouldn't thank me. I'm the reason you're here. I know. But you're also the reason I'm alive. So maybe it's complicated. Everything about this is complicated." Luca moved closer, and Isabella should have stepped back, but didn't. "You should hate me." "Why don't you hate me?" "I do," she whispered, but it was a lie and they both knew it. "Sometimes. Other times." "Other times what?" "Other times I see you bring me coffee in the morning, or leave my favorite books where I'll find them, or teach me to make pasta, and I forget what you are. I forget how this started. And that's probably the most dangerous thing of all." Luca's hand came up, his fingers brushing her cheek, wiping away a smudge of flour with a gentleness that seemed impossible from a man like him. "The most dangerous thing is that I forget, too. I forget that you're supposed to be leverage. I forget that keeping you here makes me exactly what I swore I'd never become. I forget everything except that when you're near me, I feel almost human again. Isabella's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. Luca, I know. This is insane. You should be anywhere but here, and I should be smart enough to let you go. But every time I think about you leaving, about never seeing you again, something in my chest breaks in a way I didn't know I could still feel. He was so close now, she could see flecks of darker gray in his eyes, could feel his breath on her face. Tell me to stop. Tell me you don't feel this too, and I'll walk away right now. But Isabella couldn't say it, because it would be a lie. Despite everything, despite the insanity of it all, she did feel it. This pull between them that had nothing to do with logic or safety or any of the things that should matter. This recognition of something in him that called to something in her, two broken pieces that somehow fit together. I can't, she breathed. I can't tell you that. Luca's eyes closed briefly, and when they opened again, the control he'd maintained for 2 weeks was crumbling. Then, God help us both. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't sweet. It was desperate and hungry and full of 2 weeks of denied wanting. His hands came up to frame her face, his fingers threading through her hair, and Isabella's hands found his chest, feeling his heart racing as fast as hers. The kiss deepened, became something consuming, and Isabella forgot where she was, forgot how this had started, forgot everything except the feeling of Luca's mouth on hers and the way her entire body seemed to come alive under his touch. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Luca rested his forehead against hers. "This doesn't change anything," he said, but his voice shook. "This doesn't make it okay, what I did, what I'm still doing. I know," Isabella whispered, because she did know, even if she was choosing to ignore it. "I know what you are. I know what this is. But right now, in this moment, I don't care. You should care. You should be fighting to get away from me. Probably." She pulled back to look at him, her hand still on his chest. "But I'm not. So what does that make me?" "Mine," Luca said. And the possessiveness in his voice should have scared her, but instead made something low in her stomach tighten with want. "For however long this lasts, you're mine." What followed was a slow descent into something neither of them could control. They didn't talk about what had happened in the kitchen. They didn't define it or analyze it. They simply let it exist, this thing growing between them that defied every rule either of them had ever followed. Luca started coming home earlier. Isabella started waiting for him, anticipation building throughout the day until she heard his key in the lock. They'd have dinner together, conversations flowing more easily now, touching on everything from literature to philosophy to the small details of life that strangers shouldn't share, but they did anyway. And then, inevitably, they'd end up in each other's orbit, magnetic and unavoidable. Sometimes it was just sitting close on the couch, her reading while he worked on his laptop, their knees touching, that small point of contact somehow electric. Sometimes it was Luca's hand finding hers across the dinner table, fingers interlacing like it was the most natural thing in the world. And sometimes, late at night when sleep wouldn't come, they'd end up pressed against each other on the couch or standing at the windows, kissing like drowning people gasping for air. But Luca never pushed for more. Even when Isabella could feel how much he wanted to, even when she pressed closer and made it clear she wanted it too, he would pull back, his control ironclad despite the hunger in his eyes. "Not like this," he'd say, his voice rough. "Not while you're here because you don't have a choice." "I'm choosing this," Isabella would argue. "Choosing me. Right now. You can't choose anything when I'm the one holding the cage door closed." It frustrated her, this line he'd drawn, but it also made her heart ache in the best and worst ways, because it meant he saw her as more than something to possess. It meant he wanted her consent to be real, not coerced by circumstance. 3 weeks after the first kiss, everything changed. Luca came home earlier than usual, his expression dark, tension radiating off him in waves. Isabella looked up from her textbook, immediately sensing something was wrong. What happened? Vincent made his move. Luca poured himself a drink, downed it in one swallow. He took Sofia Ramon, the actual niece he cares about. He's demanding the flash drive and the money, plus 10 million more for the trouble we've caused him. Isabella's stomach dropped. That's the girl your men were supposed to take instead of me. Yes, so now he has leverage. Real leverage. Which means... She didn't want to finish the thought. Luca turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made her chest constrict, which means I have to give him what he wants. The flash drive was insurance, proof of illegal deals involving some very powerful people. I was using it to keep those people in line. But if I give it to Vincent, I lose that protection, and the money, plus 10 million more, leaves me vulnerable. But you'll do it anyway. Because she's innocent. Yes. He set down his glass, moving toward her. I'll do it anyway. Because I can't be my father. Because some people still deserve to be saved. Isabella stood, meeting him halfway across the room. What about me? Where do I fit in all this? That's what I need to talk to you about. Luca's hands found her arms, his touch gentle despite the tension in his frame. Once this exchange happens, once Vincent has what he wants, the immediate danger to you is gone. He'll have no reason to come after you. No reason to care that you exist. So I can leave. The words should have filled her with relief. Instead, they felt like stones. You can leave, Luca confirmed, and something in his voice cracked. You can go back to your life, finish your degree, defend your thesis, help that little girl with the heart defect. Be the person you were always meant to be instead of wasting time in this apartment with me. Is that what you want? For me to leave? Luca's jaw tightened. What I want doesn't matter. What matters is giving you back the choice I took from you. Then I choose to stay. The words hung between them, impossible and true. Luca's eyes widened slightly, the first crack in his control. Isabella, you can't, why not? You said it yourself. Once Vincent gets what he wants, I'm safe. There's no reason I have to leave unless I want to. And I don't want to. You're not thinking clearly. This is Stockholm Syndrome, or trauma bonding, or this is me making a choice, Isabella interrupted, her hands coming up to his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath her palms. For 3 weeks I've been here, and yes, at first it was terrifying, but somewhere along the way, it stopped being about fear and started being about you. About the way you bring me coffee in the morning and ask about my research. About the way you look at me like I'm something precious instead of something you own. About conversations at 3 a.m. and teaching me to make pasta, and the way you pull back even when we both want more, because you need my choice to be real. Tears were streaming down her face now, but she didn't wipe them away. You're a criminal and a killer, and you kidnapped me, and I should hate you. But I don't. I see who you are underneath all that. The man who protected his sister, and who carries guilt for things that weren't his fault, and who's trying so hard not to be like his father that it's breaking him apart. And I'm choosing that man. I'm choosing to stay. Luca's control shattered. He pulled her against him, his arms wrapping around her so tight it almost hurt, his face buried in her hair. You're crazy, he breathed. This is insane. I know. She held him just as tightly, feeling him shake against her. But crazy seems to be working for us. They stood like that for a long time, just holding each other, and when Luca finally pulled back to look at her, his eyes were wet. I don't deserve you. I don't deserve any of this. Probably not, Isabella agreed, reaching up to wipe a tear from his cheek. But maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is that we found each other anyway, in the worst possible way, and somehow made something real out of it. Luca kissed her then, soft and reverent, like she was something holy he was afraid to break. When he pulled back, his hand still cupping her face, he said, "After I make the exchange with Vincent, after this is over, I'm taking you to dinner. A real date, somewhere nice where you get to choose to be there, where you're not my prisoner but my—" He paused, searching for the right word. "My everything," Isabella finished softly. "Yeah, that." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "My everything." The exchange was set for midnight at a warehouse in Red Hook, because of course it was. Luca had tried to make Isabella stay at the penthouse, but she'd refused, arguing that she had every right to be there when this chapter of her life finally closed. He'd relented, though his expression made it clear he hated every second of it. They arrived 30 minutes early, Luca's men already in position around the perimeter. Isabella stayed in the SUV with Marco, who kept giving her nervous glances like she might explode at any moment. Through the tinted windows, she could see Luca standing in the center of the empty warehouse floor, a duffel bag at his feet containing the money, the flash drive in his jacket pocket. He looked calm, controlled, every inch the dangerous man she'd first seen 3 weeks ago. It was hard to reconcile him with the man who'd held her in the kitchen 2 nights ago and told her she was his everything. At 11,058, headlights cut through the darkness. A black van pulled up, and Isabella's breath caught as men emerged. 6 of them, all armed, all looking like violence was their first language. And in the middle, held between 2 of the men, was a young woman who looked terrified. Sophia Romano, the girl who was supposed to be Isabella. Vincent emerged last. He was shorter than Isabella had imagined, maybe 5'9", with silver hair and the kind of face that probably looked grandfatherly until you saw his eyes. They were cold, calculating, and when he looked at Luca, his expression was pure predatory satisfaction. "Moretti," he called out, his voice carrying across the space, "you have something that belongs to me, and you have something I need to resolve." Luca's voice was flat, emotionless. The flash drive and the money for the girl. That was the deal. The deal has changed. Vincent's smile was all teeth. "See, I've been thinking. That flash drive is worth more than 10 million. It's worth maybe 50 million, sold to the right people. So here's my new offer. You give me everything, and I let you walk away with your life." In the SUV, Marco swore under his breath. Isabella's hands clenched into fists, every muscle in her body tense. This was going wrong. She could feel it. "I don't think so," Luca said calmly. "You harm that girl, and every connection you have in this city will turn on you. Her uncle might be in your pocket, but she's innocent. Touching her breaks codes even you can't afford to violate." "Maybe." Vincent shrugged. "Or maybe I don't care about codes anymore. Maybe I take the flash drive, take the money, and leave you here bleeding out while I disappear with both." He gestured, and one of his men raised a gun, pointing it directly at Luca. Isabella's heart stopped. She was moving before she could think, throwing open the SUV door despite Marco's shout of protest. She ran, across the warehouse floor, her footsteps echoing in the vast space, and placed herself directly between the gun and Luca. "Don't." Her voice rang out clear and strong, even though she was shaking. "Don't do this." Every man in the warehouse turned to stare at her. Vincent's eyes widened, then narrowed with recognition. Well, Isabella Romano, or should I say Isabella Mitchell. My mistake of a niece. "I'm not your niece," Isabella said, keeping her voice steady even though her legs felt like they might give out. "We shared dinner, but that's all. You don't get to claim me. And yet here you are, throwing yourself in front of a bullet for the man who kidnapped you. Stockholm Syndrome is a fascinating thing. Vincent's gaze shifted to Luca, who'd gone very still behind Isabella. Or maybe something more interesting is happening here. Luca's hand found Isabella's shoulder, his grip tight. "Get back to the car," he said quietly, urgently. "Please." "No." Isabella stood her ground, staring at Vincent. "You want the flash drive and the money? Fine. Take them. Let Sophia go. Let all of us go. End this. Why would I do that when I can take everything and eliminate the only witness to my operations? Because I recorded everything. The lie came out smooth, confident. Every conversation, every detail you've shared over the years thinking I was too young or too stupid to matter. I've had it all backed up to cloud storage with instructions to release it to the FBI if anything happens to me. You kill anyone here tonight, and by morning every federal agency in the country will have enough evidence to bury you for life." The warehouse went silent. Vincent's expression shifted, uncertainty flickering across his features. He couldn't know she was bluffing, couldn't know that she'd barely spoken to him in years, that she had nothing on him. "You're lying," he said. But his voice had lost some of its confidence. "Try me." Isabella held his gaze, channeling every ounce of courage she had left. "Take the money. Take the flash drive. Disappear like you were planning to anyway. But leave us alive, and my records stay buried. It's a better deal than you deserve, but it's the only one you're getting." For a long, terrible moment, Vincent considered. Then, slowly, he smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "You know what, I believe you. You always were smarter than your idiot mother gave you credit for." He gestured to his men. "Release the girl. Take the money and the drive." Sophia was shoved forward, stumbling but managing to stay on her feet. One of Luca's men immediately moved to her side, guiding her away from Vincent's crew. Luca himself stepped around Isabella, retrieving the duffel bag and pulling the flash drive from his pocket. He walked forward slowly, stopping 10 feet from Vincent. "This doesn't make us even," Luca said quietly. "Not even close." "No," Vincent agreed, taking the bag and the drive. "But it makes us done. I suggest you take your girl and disappear for a while, Moretti. The people on that flash drive won't be happy you gave it up, and I can't guarantee your safety once they find out." He turned to Isabella. "And you, niece. Next time you see me, run." Then, he and his men were gone, dissolving into the night like smoke, leaving behind only Sophia, who was crying quietly, and Isabella, who felt like her legs might finally give out. Luca was there instantly, catching her as she swayed, his arms wrapping around her with a fierceness that spoke of how close they'd come to disaster. "What were you thinking?" His voice was rough, angry, terrified. "You could have been killed. I was thinking that I wasn't going to watch you die." Isabella pulled back to look at him, her hands on his face. "I was thinking that you've spent 3 weeks protecting me, and maybe it was my turn to protect you. You're insane." "You keep saying that." She managed a shaky smile. "Maybe I learned it from you." They went back to the penthouse that night. All of them. Sophia needed medical attention and a safe place to stay while her uncle was contacted. Luca made calls, arranging for doctors and lawyers and all the things an innocent girl caught in the crossfire would need. Isabella watched him work, seeing the careful precision with which he handled Sophia's trauma, the genuine remorse in his eyes. This was who he was, underneath everything else, someone who tried to fix what he could. It was almost dawn when Sophia finally fell asleep in the second guest room, sedated and safe. Luca's men had dispersed, securing the building, making sure Vincent's people weren't going to circle back. And finally, Isabella and Luca were alone in the living room. the city beginning to wake up outside the windows. "You didn't have to do that," Luca said quietly. He was sitting on the couch, elbows on his knees, looking more exhausted than Isabella had ever seen him. "Lie to Vincent. Put yourself at risk like that." "Yes, I did." Isabella sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. "Because you would have done the same for me. You did do the same for me. For 3 weeks. Luca turned to look at her, and in the early morning light, his eyes seemed less gray, more blue. "I still took you. That doesn't go away just because I didn't kill you. No, it doesn't. And I'm not saying I've forgiven you for that, or that what you did was okay. But people are complicated, Luca. We're allowed to be more than one thing at once. You can be the man who kidnapped me, and the man who protected me. I can be angry about how this started, and grateful for where we ended up. Both things can be true. How are you so wise?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You're 22. You should be angry and resentful and planning my downfall, not sitting here trying to make me feel better about being a criminal. Maybe I'm just too tired to be angry right now." She leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling him tense for a moment before relaxing, his arm coming around her. "Or maybe I've realized that anger is exhausting, and I'd rather spend my energy on something else. Like what? Like this. Like us. Like figuring out what happens next." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Finally, Luca spoke, his voice quiet but certain. "I meant what I said. About taking you to dinner. About giving you a real choice. Once Sophia is settled, once the immediate fallout from tonight is handled, I want to do this right." "Do what right?" "Court you." He said it like it was an old-fashioned word, which it was, and it made Isabella's heart clench. "Take you on dates. Let you decide if what you feel is real or just a product of circumstance. Give you the option to walk away at any point without fear or obligation." Isabella lifted her head to look at him. "And if I don't walk away? Then we figure out what it means for a Mafia boss and a pre-med student to build something together. We navigate the impossibility of it. We probably make a lot of mistakes and hurt each other, and struggle to reconcile your world with mine. That sounds complicated. It will be. And dangerous. Probably. And completely insane. Definitely." Luca's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. "But maybe worth it anyway. Maybe you're worth fighting for, worth changing for, worth trying to be better than I've ever been." Isabella kissed him then, soft and sweet, tasting like promises neither of them was sure they could keep, but were willing to try. When they pulled apart, she whispered against his lips, "Take me to dinner tomorrow. Somewhere nice. Somewhere I can wear the dress I saw in your sister's closet. The blue one." "Tomorrow," Luca agreed. "And every day after, if you'll let me." "We'll see," Isabella said. But she was smiling, and they both knew what her answer would be. Because some stories don't start the way they should. Some love grows in darkness instead of light, in fear instead of safety, in the space between captor and captive where nothing should bloom, but somehow does anyway. And sometimes, rarely, impossibly, that love becomes real, becomes choice instead of circumstance, becomes the thing that saves you both. Outside, the city woke up, indifferent to the miracle happening in the penthouse. 2 people who shouldn't have worked, who by all logic should have destroyed each other, choosing instead to try. Choosing to see past the worst of each other to the best. Choosing to believe that redemption was possible, that change was real, that love could grow, even in the darkest soil. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges ahead, questions to answer, trauma to process. Isabella would need to reconcile what Luca was with who he was trying to become. Luca would need to prove that his desire to change was real, not just words meant to keep her close. But in that moment, wrapped in each other's arms as the sun rose over Manhattan, they chose to try. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. The dinner was at a restaurant in the West Village that probably didn't officially exist. No sign on the door, no name on any website, just a phone number that Luca called, and a reservation that appeared like magic. Isabella wore the blue dress, simpler than she'd expected from the designer label, elegant without trying too hard. She'd found shoes that fit, done her makeup in the bathroom mirror while trying not to think about the woman who'd owned these things before her. Luca picked her up at the penthouse, even though they both lived there, because he wanted to do it right. He wore a black suit, no tie, his hair still damp from the shower, and when he saw her standing in the hallway waiting, something in his expression shifted, softened. "You're beautiful," he said. And it wasn't smooth or practiced. It was honest, almost surprised, like he'd forgotten and was remembering all over again. "Thank you." Isabella felt herself blush, which was ridiculous considering everything they'd been through, but somehow this felt more intimate, more real. The restaurant was small, maybe 10 tables, all occupied by people who looked like they belonged in a different tax bracket than normal humans. The owner greeted Luca by name, led them to a corner table with a view of the street, and didn't ask what they wanted to drink before bringing a bottle of wine that probably cost more than Isabella's monthly rent used to be. "You come here often?" Isabella asked, looking around at the exposed brick walls and the low lighting that made everything feel like a secret. "Sometimes. When I need to think. Or when I'm trying to impress someone." Luca's lips quirked. "You're the first person I've brought here in 3 years. Since Sofia?" "Since Sofia." He poured them both wine, his movements precise. She liked this place. Said it felt like being let in on something exclusive. "She would have liked you, I think. I wish I could have met her." Isabella meant it. "She sounds like she was special." She was. Luca's expression clouded briefly. She saw the best in people even when they didn't deserve it. Kind of like someone else I know. They ordered without looking at menus, Luca telling the server things in Italian that made her smile and nod. When the food came, it was art on plates, each dish more beautiful than the last, and Isabella realized she was nervous. Actually nervous. Like this was a first date instead of a strange epilogue to a kidnapping. "What are you thinking?" Luca asked, watching her push risotto around her plate. "That this is surreal. That a month ago I was worried about anatomy exams and shift schedules, and now I'm having dinner with you and I have no idea what my life is anymore." Isabella set down her fork. "That I should probably be in therapy instead of sitting here pretending this is normal. It's not normal. Nothing about this is normal." Luca reached across the table, his hand palm up in invitation. After a moment, Isabella placed her hand in his. "But maybe normal is overrated. Maybe what matters is whether you want to be here, right now, with me. And if the answer is no, if you want to walk out that door and never see me again, I'll let you. No consequences. No threats. Just freedom." Isabella's throat tightened. "And if I want to stay?" "Then we keep trying. Keep learning each other. Keep figuring out if what we have can survive outside the pressure cooker that created it." His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. "I'm going to be honest with you, Isabella. I don't know how to do this. Normal relationships, normal dating. I don't know how to be the kind of man you deserve. But I want to try. For you, I want to try. I don't need you to be perfect." Isabella squeezed his hand. "I need you to be honest. I need you to keep being the man who brought me coffee and taught me to make pasta and held me when I was scared. That's enough. That's more than enough." They finished dinner talking about small things, books they'd read, places they wanted to travel, the medical procedures Isabella was fascinated by, and the parts of his business Luca was trying to make legitimate. It felt normal, easy, like they'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. Like this was always how it was supposed to be. After dinner, they walked through the village, Luca's jacket around Isabella's shoulders against the autumn chill. The streets were quiet for New York, just the occasional car passing. The glow of apartment windows above them filled with other people's lives. "Can I ask you something?" Isabella said as they turned onto a tree-lined street she'd never seen before. "Anything. What happens now? I mean, really happens. Not the romantic version, the practical one. You have enemies who know you gave up the flash drive. I have a thesis to defend and a life to rebuild. We can't just exist in a bubble forever." Luca was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "You're right, the real world is going to intrude eventually. But here's what I'm thinking. I have resources. Connections. I can make sure you're protected while you finish your degree. You can move back to your apartment if you want, or stay at the penthouse. Whatever makes you feel safe. And I'll start transitioning my business, making it more legitimate, less dangerous. It won't happen overnight, but I can start. You do that? Change everything? I'm already changing everything. You changed it the moment you stepped between me and that gun." He stopped walking, turning to face her. "I spent 15 years becoming my father's son, building power through fear and violence. But you reminded me that I'm also my mother's son, that there's another way to be. So yes, I'll change. Not all at once, not perfectly, but I'll try. For you. For us. For the man I want to be when you look at me." Isabella reached up, her hand cupping his face, feeling the slight stubble on his jaw. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm terrified that this won't work, that one day I'll wake up and realize I've romanticized my kidnapper, that I've built a fantasy around trauma. But I'm more scared of walking away and spending the rest of my life wondering what we could have been." "Then don't. Walk away." Luca's arms came around her, pulling her close. "Stay. Fight with me when I'm being an idiot. Challenge me when I slip back into old patterns. Help me be better than I am. And I'll protect you, support your dreams, and love you in every imperfect way I know how. Love me?" Isabella pulled back to look at him, her heart skipping. "You love me?" I thought that was obvious. A real smile broke across his face, transforming him from dangerous to devastating. "I've loved you since you stood in that warehouse, bluffing to save my life. Maybe even before that. Maybe since you told me about the little girl with the heart defect and I saw that you don't save people for glory or recognition. You do it because you can't help it. Because it's who you are." Luca. "I love you, Isabella Mitchell. I love your courage and your compassion, and the way you make me want to be worthy of you. I love that you see me. Really see me. And you're still here. And I know it's too soon. I know we're supposed to take this slow. But I need you to know. I love you." The tears that had been threatening finally spilled over, and Isabella laughed through them, joy and fear, and something too big to name all tangled together. "I love you too. I love you, even though it's crazy, even though everyone would tell me I shouldn't, even though I barely understand how we got here. But I love you." He kissed her then, right there on a quiet street in the West Village, with autumn leaves falling around them and the city humming its endless song. He kissed her like she was precious and essential and the only thing in the world that mattered. And Isabella kissed him back, with everything she had. All her hope and fear and impossible love poured into that moment. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Luca rested his forehead against hers. "Come home with me?" "I am home," Isabella whispered. "Wherever you are, that's home now." They walked back to the penthouse hand in hand, talking about everything and nothing. About the thesis Isabella would defend, the hospital she wanted to work at, the little girl whose surgery was scheduled for next month, about Luca's plans to transition his business, the legitimate real estate deals he'd been avoiding because they required more patience than violence. About a future that seemed impossible, but that they were going to build anyway. In the penthouse, the city spreading out below them in a carpet of lights, they stood at the windows where they'd had so many conversations. "I have something for you," Luca said, pulling a small box from his pocket. "Before you panic, it's not a ring. It's too soon for that, and when I ask you to marry me, I want it to be without any question that you're choosing it freely." He opened the box to reveal a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a small key. "It's the key to this apartment," he explained, "but also a symbol. You're not locked in anymore. You can leave whenever you want, come back whenever you want. This is your choice now, your life, your decision, always." Isabella took the bracelet with shaking hands, letting him fasten it around her wrist. The weight of it felt like freedom and commitment all at once. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "For this. For everything. For seeing me. Thank you for letting me see you. For looking past what I am to who I could be. For saving me from myself." They stood there together, two people who had found each other in the worst way possible and chosen to build something beautiful from the wreckage. Outside, the city never slept, full of millions of other stories, other lives, other impossible loves. But in that moment, in that space, there was only them. Only this choice they were making to try, to hope, to believe that redemption was possible. It wouldn't be a fairy tale. There would be hard conversations ahead, trust that needed to be rebuilt day by day, trauma that required processing. Isabella would have moments of doubt, of fear, of wondering if she was making a terrible mistake. Luca would struggle with the violence ingrained in him, the instinct to control rather than surrender, the weight of who he'd been fighting against, who he wanted to become. But they would face it together. They would choose each other, over and over, in all the small moments that mattered. And maybe that was the real story. Not the dramatic beginning or the romantic middle, but the quiet choice to stay, to love someone despite their flaws, despite the impossible circumstances, despite every logical reason why it shouldn't work. To see their darkness and their light and choose both. "What are you thinking?" Luca asked, his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "That I never imagined my love story would start with a kidnapping." Isabella leaned back against him, feeling solid and safe and real. "But I can't imagine it starting any other way. Can't imagine finding this with anyone else. Neither can I." He turned her in his arms, his eyes serious. "I don't believe in fate or destiny or any of that, but I believe we found each other for a reason. Maybe so I could stop being my father. Maybe so you could stop trying to save everyone else and let someone save you too. Maybe just because the universe has a twisted sense of humor. All of the above? Probably." Isabella smiled, reaching up to kiss him softly. "Well, if the universe wants us together, who are we to argue? Who? Indeed." And there, in the penthouse overlooking Manhattan, with the key to freedom on her wrist and love in her heart, Isabella chose to stay. Not because she was trapped, but because this, impossibly, was where she wanted to be. Sometimes love doesn't ask permission. Sometimes it crashes into your life like a storm, destroying everything you thought you knew and rebuilding it into something unrecognizable. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is open your heart to someone who shouldn't have access to it. But sometimes, rarely, miraculously, that dangerous choice becomes the thing that saves you both. And if you've listened to this story and found yourself believing, even for a moment, that love can grow in darkness, that people can change, that second chances are real, then maybe you understand what Isabella and Luca discovered. That being seen, truly seen by another person, is worth almost any risk. That choosing love, even imperfect love, even impossible love, is always better than choosing safety over connection. That sometimes the wrong person turns out to be exactly right. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and leave your like. Become a member to get early access to more stories of love that defies logic. And if you really felt it was worth your time, click the super thanks button. Your support helps us continue bringing narratives that prove love, in all its complicated forms, is still worth believing in.